Hey, true believers, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and yes, I'm back talking more MCU on Disney+. So that's right, guys. We now come to the next piece of Marvel material on Disney+, and the time has finally come. That's right. For me to review this, and this being my part 1 review. Yes, because you read the title some more, you know what I'm reviewing, and this being my part 1 review, yes, we now finally come up to this. What everybody had been looking forward to for a while. I mean, ever since it was announced that we were going to see them come back, and when they made a few teases, and how it would build up slowly but surely, in at least one film that one of these characters made a cameo in, and in 2 MCU shows on Disney Plus that one of them did appear and was kind of the antagonist and all that. You get what I'm saying. You know. Yes. And finally, when this came out, it was worth the wait and such, because all of us, we loved the first show centering on one vigilante in New York, and to see him come back in all of his glory. Oh yeah, not to mention because, yeah, a couple of other shows he did appear in as well, because, you know, from She-Hulk and also in Echo. Yeah, just for one episode of Echo and such. But still, you get my point, and you know the basics. You know, for those who have been, following the MCU, and on account of, yes, that's right, guys. Now I am finally reviewing the first season of, and by the way, the first 3 episodes in my part 1 review of, Daredevil. Born Again. Yes. Oh yes. Daredevil Born Again. Again, we've all been waiting for this for quite a long time, and it finally came to be. Yep. To finally see Daredevil, this one famous vigilante hero in the streets of New York, come back with a fresh new show and being officially in the MCU timeline, like in the timeline and following with the other pieces of MCU material. And maybe some of you are wondering, because, yeah, I mean, on account of the first Daredevil series, yeah, I mean, but it's complicated. I'm sure you guys probably are aware of that. Because, yeah, I mean, from Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, all of those that were first on Netflix, they are set in the MCU, but at the same time, just, yeah, I'm sure you know, but anyways. So, yeah, I'm glad to have finally sit down and watched the first 3 episodes of Daredevil. And shout out to each of my parents, because, well, they had already seen it and just loved it. And I, of course, knew I was going to. And to finally watch it, yeah, I mean, it did not disappoint. Yeah, the first 3 episodes of Daredevil Born Again, Season 1, did not disappoint, of course. And, of course, I knew, for a while that the show itself, the sequel series to Daredevil, it did pretty well. Yep. And it was great to see. After, 10 years since we last saw Daredevil, and even after, the first show of his did come to an end, we would see him again in The Defenders, then a little later on, we would then see him again in Spider-Man No Way Home, then in 2 of the MCU shows, as I said, She-Hulk and Echoes, yeah. And now to finally see him in action in another piece of Marvel material of his own, yep, a sequel series and all that. And with the title being different, not just Daredevil, but something else in the title, Born Again. Oh yeah, that was great. And of course, Wilson Fisk, obviously, having to have Wilson Fisk come back. And slowly but surely, a couple of other characters whom we saw in the first Daredevil series make their comeback as well, with addition of new characters that step in. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, the first 3 episodes of Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, they were fantastic. Off to a great start, with what the first 3 episodes have to offer, with what Matt Murdock gets himself into, where, unexpectedly even for him, that he would just step away from his alter ego, him as the vigilante hero in the streets of New York. He would step away from that for 1 year. And it's obvious, because he did so, at some point in the show, he, of course, was going to come back as you-know-who. Matt Murdock as Daredevil, of course. Yeah. And with what Wilson Fisk gets himself into, I tell you, because it's hard to believe he managed to find a way to make himself become mayor, but until we talk about that some more as I break down / dive into the episodes, the first 3 episodes. Just everything that, we've so far seen, that I've so far seen in season 1 of Born Again, with the first 3 episodes just, amazing. Totally amazing. And by the way, I was told by my parents, and I'm sure the same would go for some of you if obviously you knew about this, that apparently the violence and gruesome stuff were going to be more extreme than the first Daredevil show? Well, so far, and because I started with the first 3 episodes, obviously there are a couple of gruesome stuff here and there with where it happens, but, golly, especially, there's one part where Daredevil, he breaks, an arm, and, God, blood coming, from the elbow, just up until we get there. God. Now, that was very gruesome, but anyways. But, just, again, overall, the first 3 episodes that start off the first season of Daredevil Born Again, fantastic. Definitely. Okay. Now, with the first things I've had to say about Daredevil Born Again and the first 3 episodes out of the way, etc. Now, as always, start with reading the description / the story of these episodes and so on. All right. So, of course, starting with episode 1 of Daredevil Born Again, which being titled Heaven's Half Hour. Fitting title. Description / the story. No longer the devil of Hell's Kitchen, where Matt Murdock resides, and be referred to as Hell's Kitchen and such. Matt Murdock builds a new life using only his skills as a lawyer, just sticking with the lawyer business and all that, in his ongoing fight for justice. But when Wilson Fisk returns to New York City, officially, with sights set to new heights, Matt knows peace cannot last. Yeah, it's obvious, and now that Wilson has stepped in the picture, yet again, in the Big Apple. Okay, now with reading the description / the story done / out of the way, let us now dive in / break down the first episode of Daredevil Born Again itself. Yeah, here we go. Well, I tell you, the first opening sequence to the show itself, just amazing, because the way it starts off, we of course see 3 familiar characters we had of course seen in the first Daredevil series, the titled character himself, but going just as himself, Matt Murdock, once again being played by good old Charlie Cox. He and 2 of his friends / legal partners, whom we once again see, which, of course, being Karen Page, once again being played by the lovely, talented Deborah Ann Wool, and Foggy Nelson, being played by Eldon Henson. They basically go to Josie's bar in celebration of their NYPD associate, Cherry. He's now retiring and such. And everything's going pretty well. For all of them celebrating at the bar and on account of Jerry's retirement, and Jerry being played by Clark Johnson, and he's one of the new characters in the new Daredevil series. However, out of nowhere, an old foe of theirs, especially on account of Matt as his alter ego, Benjamin Poindexter, aka Bullseye, is back. And out of nowhere, and even when at one point Foggy, he received a phone call from a friend of his, people interrogating him or something, trying to break into his place. And when he took the call outside, something out of the blue happens. Foggy gets shot by Bullseye. And this rages Matt, and it doesn't take him too long to get into his getup as Daredevil, of course. And with all hell breaking loose in Josie's bar, and Cherry and a few others getting into action to take care of the situation, as well as Daredevil, and with, this one long extended shot, like no cuts, no jump cuts. It's just this long camera shot. We're down below the bar, where the main bar is, and Bullseye, when Daredevil, wounds Bullseye quite a lot, Bullseye trying to make his escape and, make his way through the building, going upstairs, Daredevil behind him, then they would find themselves on top of the roof, all that, just in one shot. That was amazing. Yeah, and for that moment. And, man, Deborah Ann Wool's performance as Karen right here, just, oh, man, you can hear the upsetment and the desperateness that Karen is, she's just determined for Foggy to make it. And Daredevil, knowing Daredevil, Matt Murdock, because he's blind, because he can hear and detect and sense things, and with his good sense of hearing, well, we can hear the low heartbeat and such, the slow heartbeats of Foggy. And, it's happening, and it does so. Foggy, and after appearing in one episode, when we first see him after all these years, he dies. God, that hits hard. There's no doubt, for all the Daredevil fans, any of you. And just how upset Karen is. And the same goes for Daredevil, and just a complete rage. He finishes off Bullseye, because with how much Bullseye's wounded severely, Daredevil throws him off the building, he lands on the floor, but, Bullseye doesn't die from that. No, of course he's alive. He makes it out of there. But this time he's going to be booked. This time for sure. And even when he made his way up to the rooftop of the building, he would see that Daredevil, it's Matt Murdock. Yeah, he would discover the true identity of Daredevil. It's Matt Murdock. Because Matt, he did at one point take off his mask. And also, if you notice that even when the intro rolls with the mask of Daredevil, one of the horns is missing. Nice detail there, even when it's in the intro of the show. And, when it comes to the intros of any MCU show, they're always fantastic, right? But, as I just said, Cherry would discover, when he made his way up top of the roof of the building of Josie's bar, he would discover that Matt is Daredevil. And that's a good thing that Cherry managed to get used to it, I guess, because with what would happen next, and the more we would see of Cherry so far throughout the show. But, and basically what's now happened. And even after that happens, the intro plays, 1 year passes. Matt is no longer the Daredevil. That vigilante hero in that part of the streets of New York, he's officially retired. He's no more. At least for now. That's what Matt feels. That's what he felt at the time. And with, how far we go into the show, and obviously at some point in the show, he's going to come back, as this guy, right? So, obviously. But because he's now retired, now he's sticking full-time to what he's also is good at. Being one hell of a good lawyer. Pardon my French, but it's true. Yeah, so it's unfortunate, and with, how much this affected him. Not to mention, I think it's obvious that, even when, 1 year passes, even, say, when at the bar, before all hell broke loose, Matt and Karen, because they were talking, and maybe they were going to get together and such, but that obviously never happened. They parted ways and such, and we would get a couple of more details about what happened between them afterwards and after Foggy's death, because again, on account that Foggy had such a huge impact on Matt, his death and such. Just honestly, who can blame Matt, But, obviously, again, we know at some point in the show, in the first season, he's coming back as you-know-who. So, with what's going on 1 year after Matt retired from being the Daredevil, well, Matt, doing a new law firm and such, and working with a new district attorney by the name of Kristen McDuffie. Yeah, I think I'm getting her last name right. Being played by Nikki M. James. And at one point, we would see, the fact that this is 1 year later, Benjamin/Bullseye appearing in court, and Karen shows up, and yeah, the fact that it's been just 1 year since, they last saw each other. They hadn't spoken to each other in a while, Matt and Karen. Well, Karen being here on behalf of both of them, their late friend Foggy. And the sentence that is given to Bullseye is not exactly what both Karen and Matt were expecting. I'm pretty sure they were expecting Bullseye would get a death sentence. No. Spending the rest of his life in prison and all that. Yeah, that sentence. Which, yeah, you can see each of Karen and Matt, the look on their faces, they are not pleased by this. No. And we would discover that, yeah, Karen, she moved out of New York City and had moved to San Francisco. Hey, where, Ant-Man resides. Yeah. And amongst other characters in the MCU that reside in San Francisco, as we all know, but most prominently Ant-Man, Scott. Yeah, but anyways. So, yeah, and, according to Karen, she tells Matt that, after Foggy's death, he never reached out or talked to her or anything like that for a couple of weeks and all that, and just eventually, because it just went downhill. And even if they were going to pursue a relationship and all that, knowing those two, and if you've seen the first Daredevil series, yeah. And, yeah, by this point, Karen has moved on, and even before she leaves, she gives something to Matt, this, red triangle-shaped piece. It's obviously going to be something very important. Whatever it is, we're obviously going to find out later on in the show. But yep, that's the last we see of Karen. Hopefully for now, just, anyways. Yeah, again, it's unfortunate that the way that this show first started off, disaster had to strike. But, this is Daredevil, and surely that's what we would sometimes expect, right? But anyways, then at one point, and to speed things up some, because, yeah, then at one point, Matt would be set up for a date, thanks to Kristen. Yeah. However, Matt thought that he was going to meet a new therapist or something. And this therapist whom he meets with at this coffee shop, well, she thought that, she was meeting someone, lawyer stuff and all that. When they both realized, and the fact that both of them know Kristen, they both realized that, yeah, Kristen set both of them up on a date. And they are not pleased with Kristen. They just want to... Yeah, knowing Kristen so far in the show, and according to both of these characters, and whom Matt meets with, this therapist, is newcomer Heather Glenn, being played by Margarita Levevia, if I even got her last name right, but again, me sometimes. But it doesn't take too long, surprisingly, for both Matt and Heather to hit things off. I mean, they're still pissed at Kristen, but... even they can't deny that, they both can't deny that Kristen did something pretty good, but they just don't want to admit it, of course. Okay, but now let's talk about and come to whom else we triumphantly see return in something else, Daredevil and all that. And after, the last two MCU shows that he appeared in, and he was somewhat of the antagonist, yeah, one of them he definitely was, but still, yeah, after being in, say, Hawkeye and Echo, yep, he's finally back in the next Daredevil show. And that, of course, being Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. Kingpin. Yeah, and once again being played by good old Vincent D'Onofrio. Yep. Because after being away and being absent and all that because of a vigilante attack and such, obviously on account of Echo and all that, well, he finally steps back into the picture, back in New York City, even when he would reunite with his wife, Vanessa Fisk, being played by Alit Zuri, if I got her full name right, but again, me sometimes. And yeah, the chemistry that both Mr. and Mrs. Fix have is interesting, and, like, you know, the troubles that both of them went through, well, especially because Wilson had disappeared from his wife and all that, and Vanessa having taken over a business and all that, you know, with all the specific things they say in their conversation. But basically, with Wilson returning to New York, he's planning to become mayor, and if he'll be voted for mayor and all that, you know, running for mayor and such, and with a anti-vigilante agenda and all that. And Matt, obviously, he would be well aware of this. It wouldn't take him too long to find out about Wilson's presence back in New York and with what Wilson's up to this time. And at one point, Matt would have a meeting with Wilson at a diner and such, and, well, I mean, you know, and I've sometimes said this, that I like when certain moments like this in particularly happen. You have the protagonist and the antagonist not going at it at each other's throats and such. They have a simple, casual, normal talk. And that's what happens for both Matt and Wilson. Seems to go pretty well. They have a few chuckles and laughs, but not all that good and such. Nothing too friendly. And recapping a few things that, you know, the last time both of them got themselves into, that Wilson tried to kill him and all that, just, you know, a few recaps and callbacks, I should say, from the first Daredevil series, etc. Yeah, even like a mentioning of Echo and Wilson's way, etc. You get my point. But overall, Matt basically explains to Wilson, warning him that if Wilson steps out of line and all that, just, yeah, it's not going to be very pretty. It's going to be an ugly sight. And Wilson makes it clear to Matt that, that there will be consequences if Matt, he resumes his, you know, vigilante activities and all that, and, you know, after he wins the election. If he'll win the election, then yeah. And if Matt would step back, he'd be screwed. But obviously, Matt would find a way if that were to happen and such. Yeah. But I think it's obvious that, yeah, after this conversation happens, the next time that both of them would see each other, yeah, next time they're gonna go at it against each other. Like, go for the throats and all that. You get what I'm saying. But, yeah, overall and eventually, towards the end of the first episode, Wilson would end up winning the election, now becoming mayor of New York. Yep. You know, I do remember having a talk with my mom most prominently. Yeah, because we were both talking about this. Like, you know, it's surprising that with what's going on during the timeline of Daredevil Born Again, Wilson having become mayor, like, wouldn't anybody else in New York, like all the other heroes, Nick Fury and anybody, you get my point, would they be aware? Surely they would be aware of Wilson, Fix, and all that. I don't know, unless it's been established by Kevin Feige and the others. I'm just simply saying, but, you know, obviously, we wouldn't want anybody else to intervene with Daredevil show. I mean, it depends, you know, because sometimes it doesn't hurt if a character or two makes a surprising appearance in whatever, in a show or a movie in the MCU. You get what I'm saying? And I love that. And, you know, they got to do it very carefully, and it's got to make sense. And most of the time it does. Anyways, but, yeah. But not long after, Wilson won the election, and everybody, because here's another thing. At times so far in this show, there's this, news broadcaster or something, you know, because BB, you know, interviewing these people, these citizens in New York about, you know, Daredevil's absence, Wilson Fix, and all that. And even say when Matt, he can hear through with his powerful hearing, you know, what people are saying about Wilson Fix. A good majority of people are not satisfied with Wilson at first being nominated for and being voted for mayor, and even when he does become mayor and all that, even the policeman, it's mentioned about the policeman that, you know, can't stand Wilson and all that. Yeah, even when it was mentioned that, you know, years ago, Wilson Fix, he crushed a man's head and all that. another callback to the first Daredevil show, because all the gruesome murders that Wilson did in the first show, like, golly, because how can we not forget, and if you remember this too, like, one particularly that I can think of right now is, Daredevil, attacking and beating up someone, and to finish it off, smashing his head with a car door. Yes, that. I'm sure most of you remember that. Gruesome of Will Fix, how psychotic he is. But anyways, and speaking more of Wilson, because there is a moment where Wilson, he's on top of a roof of a building, and seeing everybody celebrating and such, and on account that he's won the election of mayor, well, he would meet with his wife on the roof, and it would be mentioned that Wilson is full aware that his wife, Vanessa, had an affair with a man named Adam. What's this all about? I wonder where this is going. And yeah, how very complicated both of their love and marriages at this state is, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah. And also, besides from that, we would get a nice moment with Matt and Heather. The further they've continued on seeing each other, and Heather commenting that Matt is bad at coffee dating, but dining while dating, he's good at. Yeah. And, yeah, even after, because, yeah, when they were walking on the street, and Matt, of course, can hear that Wilson won and is now mayor, well, a bit more talk that both Heather and Matt would have, and it would end with, because dropping Heather off at her place, the apartment she lives in, Heather kissing Matt, and yeah, it's great to see that it didn't take too long for them to really hit it off, yeah. And see, because when they first were pissed off at Kristen, no, she did a good thing. She knew exactly what she was doing. So don't underestimate someone like Kristen, right? Anyways, but yeah. And just like one more moment we get between, cutting to say Matt and Wilson. Like Wilson looking down below from the rooftop he's at and Matt looking up above and all that. Just like how this episode ends off. Like, ugh. It's amazing. But yeah, so that's our first episode for Daredevil Born Again, which again, being titled Heaven's Half Hour. It was a great way to start off this show entirely, the first season and all that. Everything that we've so far seen that has happened in the first episode, how the episode first starts off, Matt is no longer Daredevil, a huge loss, which being Foggy, Karen being absent and all that, but hopefully we'll see Karen again. And Wilson stepping back in the picture in New York, now becoming mayor, Matt having a new girlfriend, and, well, new law firm that Matt's at and all that, the new characters that are introduced, everything that first happens in the first episode of Daredevil Born Again, Heaven's Half Hour, did not disappoint. Yes. All right, next up, episode 2, Optics. Description / the story. Matt Murdock takes a new client, Hector Elia, if I got his last name right, yeah. But this local hero from the Heights is more than he claims to be. Fisk learns the power of optics, hence the title of the episode, in his new and very public role. All right, now to break down and dive into episode 2. So, with what happens in episode 2? Well, another interesting way to start off the second episode of Daredevil Born Again. Well, down in a subway, we see, as I said in the description / the story, Hector Ayali. Yeah, I think, I'm saying it right this time. Well, he would see two guys beating up this one guy, and this has to do with, like, say, the whole thing of Wilson Fix winning for mayor and so on. Yeah, these two guys by the name of Powell, being played by Hamish Allen Headley, and Shannon, who, yeah, he's uncredited. There's not that much of Shannon, because with what's going to happen to him momentarily, Shannon being played by Jefferson Cox. They're beating up this guy by the name of Nicky Torres, being played by Nick Jordan. And Hector intervenes, trying to help out Nicky with the situation, just telling him to stop, and Nikki takes action, Hector, takes action helping Nikki. Don't want to get the names mixed up. And Nikki, he flees the scene. However, when Hector is, still fighting with them and now is fighting with Shannon, well, and how close they're getting to the subway train tracks, well, we can clearly see it wasn't Hector's doing. He didn't intentionally do anything, no, because they let go of one another and all that. And Shannon, well, he slipped and, falling into the train tracks, but boom! An incoming subway train hits him. He's dead clearly. Oh, yeah. And Powell, he would whip out a gun, and turns out both Powell and the now late Shannon, they too are NYPD. Yeah, policemen and all that in New York. New York Police Department, etc. Yeah, NYPD, that's why it's, short for that. Anyways. And so what a heck of a way for that episode to start off. But with what would happen next, well, it wouldn't take too long for Matt to meet with Hector, and, when listening to Hector's side of the story, because, Matt learning about what has happened and the situation that Hector got into, being framed for murdering someone, pushing someone with the incoming subway train, bullcrap, because we clearly saw, us the audience did. Well, Matt being Matt, of course, with what he can sense inside of Hector, he believes in Hector, know that he's innocent, and he takes in Hector as his client and such. He will speak on behalf of Hector. And even when he gets now retired NYPD associate Cherry involved in this. Now Cherry is working for Matt, being the investigator and such, and it would be up to Cherry, as well as Kristen, to both investigate, especially Cherry. They would ask questions for, asking questions to Hector's wife, which being Soledad Alali, Hector's wife being played by Ashley Mary Ortiz. Yeah, I think I said that right. And talking about the situation, her husband's and all that, and Cherry, he would investigate in Hector's room, and it actually was mentioned, early on in the show, because the mentioning of the white tiger and all that, Cherry would discover that in one case, briefcase and all that, well, turns out that Hector, what Cherry finds out, Hector is actually the White Tiger. And if you're aware of the character of White Tiger, because of course White Tiger, he's come from the Marvel Comics, this is where White Tiger would make his debut in the MCU. However, when we get to episode 3, until we get there. But I'm sure most of you know. Alright, but now let's come to Wilson Fisk in this episode, because, hence the title of this episode, Optics. He's trying to improve optics, and with his, with the first few days of him being mayor, because, at one point, he is told to, have a meeting with, this, fireman and such, and, even, he would be informed that the fireman is not too fond of Wilson and all that. And either the fireman can come to his office or Wilson can come to him at the fire station. And Wilson feels that, rightfully so, it's more appropriate to go down to the fire station. And by the way, because the other characters that we get, and whom are working alongside with Wilson. We have Shelia Rivera being played by Sabrina Guevara, if I got her full name right, and Daniel Blake, who is very fond of Wilson Fisk. His mood and such, and his personality, And, Wilson, he takes him in and has him up top the list on the position he has him in. Daniel Blake being played by Michael Gandolfini, the son of the late, great James Gandolfini. Like father and son, being a good actor and such. And Michael Gandolfini, he does not disappoint in Daredevil, Born Again. But And at one point, and when they're trying to make their way to the fire station, well, traffic's being held up because of, like, construction work, and Wilson, he takes it upon himself. He doesn't care, because he's Wilson Fix. He has these construction guys, put in some concrete, and because of this hole and such, get it done and all that. And, his way of, like, trying to show the people, whom do record him on their phones, that he's trying to do something good and to show that, he can do good and such, Not to mention that Wilson, he's trying to step away from being known as Kingpin and all that. Yeah. But obviously that's not going to last too long. Also, there are times where Wilson, like, he's tapping his fingers on a desk and all that, and his hand and such just, being bruised. Well, not bruised, but, scars, like, bloody and all that, red marks and such. But anyways, and still speed things up, because then, when it would come back to Matt and the others, because, now the court is in session for Hector. Well, just with what goes on during those court cases, well, Matt doing his very best, and, even say when, like, so far those that talk about Hector and such, even when, say, at one point, and someone else that is speaking towards Hector, there's of course someone else in the court case that wants to try to take down that person, all that, the basics. And that being D.A. Hochberg, being played by John Benjamin Hickey. And with how much he's annoying and you kind of, like, want to strangle him, like, John Benjamin Hickey, he was good in this. He was good in this show, with how much we so far get of him. And at one point, well, Matt convinced the judge to, to withhold the identity of Hector being the White Tiger, because of believing that, unfairly bias of the jury and all that, those basics. And the judge being named Judge Cooper, being played by Andrew Polk. Yeah, and Andrew Polk, he too was good. All right, and what would happen next, and coming back to Wilson, well, to still, prove on his first days of mayor, the optics and such, well, with what we had seen in the first episode, and we continue to see in this episode, and then up to episode 3, etc., news reports, people being interviewed, journalist stuff, Wilson would have Daniel bring in journalist B.B. Urich, I think I'm saying her last name right, being played by Genia Walton. And with what Wilson gets out of her, apparently, he learns from B.B. that the commissioner, the popular NYPD commissioner, is gonna retire and such, resign, because, in protest of, Wilson being mayor and all that. Yeah, Chief Gallo, that's his name. Chief Gallo, whom, Wilson would have an interaction with a little later, and would put a threat on Chief Gallo because of him, like, going to resign and such, like, step away, and, again, in protests of Wilson having become mayor, and so on. And to still speed things up, because, we would see Wilson have an interaction with the chief in person, Gallo. Yes, Chief Gallo being played by Michael Gaston. Yes, and, Wilson showing up to have a chat with him while at a funeral service. Yeah, and Gallo, because not being too fond of Wilson, of course. Just Gallo, rightfully so, insulting Wilson, being a whiny kid, wanting attention, all that, mentioning about his past life and all that, and even calling him by his alter ego, Kingpin. Just, but still, Wilson threatening Gallo if he resigns and such. Just, I mean, does Gallo have a choice by this point? Especially on account of someone like Wilson? Would you really take the chance to really say no or anything like that to Wilson? You get what I'm saying? Just, But anyways, and then also, we would also get more of Heather in this episode, because at one point, because she's at this panel and, going to do a book signing and such, because, she's an author, she's published a new book, and those after the conference, her being interviewed, well, people being lined up to, get her autograph and such, write autograph the book, and There's one person that is wanting to seek help from her and all that, get help from her. Baston, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name right. Yeah, being played by Hunter Duan. Then after him, someone whom I didn't mention yet, whom also works with Wilson, that being Buck Cashman, being played by Artie Frauchen. If I got his last name right, but again, you know me sometimes. He, of course, has Heather sign the book, but there's more to it, because we would then see Heather having to meet with both Mr. and Mrs. Fix. Couples therapy and such. Yeah, that's what's happening. Oh, man, because if Wilson were to find out that Heather is in links with Matt, oh, dear. Yeah, but we'll find out soon. I will find out, and, if any of you whom... I don't know, because, anybody who hadn't checked this out yet, like me, but is now checking it out, you get what I'm saying. Yeah. But it still speeds things up some, because, almost up to the end of this episode, because, the more that Matt and the others would try to help out Hector, well, this would lead to Matt getting some information and details in regards to Nikki Torres, knowing where Nikki is and all that. And apparently, when, it is suggested that Nikki should come in and speak about Hector and all that, well, there is at least one or two cops that, mention, and Matt can hear this, that Nikki should not come in. So, definitely, Matt needs to go after and rescue and bring in Nikki. Make sure at all costs he's safe and sound, and this could be the one-way ticket for Hector to be innocent and all that. Not to mention that Hector brought this up to Matt at one point about wanting to be on an island and such with his family, his wife, and the sound of a specific bird. All the things that Hector specifically says. Very interesting. And where Hector originally resides at. Yeah, where he comes from. But, overall, Matt would locate Nikki, and he would call up Cherry to pick up Nikki and make sure he's safe and sound. And because Matt shows up just in the nick of time right before two corrupted NYPD officers are about to show up, and they're going to take Nikki out. And, one of those NYPD guys is Powell. Powell's back at it once again. And just in time, Matt explaining Nikki that, Nikki can trust him and all that. He's gonna help him and all that. And guiding Nikki to go out one of the windows to meet with Cherry and all that. And once he's gone, well, Matt, he deals with the two NYPD guys. And, they know who Matt is, but man, because with them being well aware of what Matt's doing and on account of Nikki, then they start to beat the crap out of him. And even one of the NYPD officers, and they're gonna take the huge risk. They're gonna take the huge balls to do, and the fact that this is a lawyer we're talking about, they're gonna kill him. But sure enough, Matt, a bit of Daredevil gets back into him. Yep, because he would then start to kick the living daylights out of them, punch them, severely wound them. And as I said earlier, one part where the one NYPD officer that was with Powell, it was, him, breaking his arm and, his elbow, oh, jeez, there's one big gruesome moment right there that I've seen, and just that I can think of that's happened so far in the show, but, just overall, the crazy fights that happen, most prominently with Matt kicking their butts, well, he finishes them once and for all. I mean, they don't die or anything, but just, they're very severely wounded. And not to mention, I think, because, Powell would be asked about, Hector and all that. When he would be brought in for questioning. It would be his turn at the microphone to talk about Hector and all that. And right before episode 2 ends off, well, because, with what the heck just happened, with Matt kicking both their butts, he rages, he screams and all that because of what he just did. Like I said, a bit of Daredevil came back into him. The fighting skills and all that he has, of course. Man, what a heck of a way for that to end off the second episode, right? But it was still a good episode. from beginning to end. Yep, the second episode of Daredevil Born Again, Optics, it was another, good episode, and for it being the second episode, everything that now happens in this, we've got a situation here where Matt is trying to prove that Hector, whom would turn out to, of course, be the White Tiger. And did I forget to mention that? Yeah, I did. That, Matt would mention this to Hector, that this identity he's been keeping and all that, and this kind of puts a damper. And as I said, when Matt convinced the judge to, withdraw that, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, just to see Hector, the White Tiger, make his debut in the MCU, with what's going on with Wilson in this episode, the optics he's doing, and with the journalist BB Oric that comes in and mentions about Chief Gallo, everything else that happens with Wilson, the couples therapy that both him and his wife Vanessa get themselves into with Heather, and if things are going to turn out pretty good, up by the next episode, in the case of Hector, now that they've retrieved and saved Nikki. Well, we're of course about to find out in the third episode. Yeah, but just overall, and to round things off with episode 2, Optics, it was another good episode for it being the second episode of Daredevil Born Again. Definitely. All right, now we come to episode 3, and the last episode for my part 1 review of Daredevil Born Again season 1. Okay, description / the story, and the title of the episode being The Hollow of His Hand. Okay, the trial of Hector Elia begins. Matt Murdock takes on the system to defend an innocent man. Wilson Fick's old business associates grow restless in their desire to claim his vacant mantle, as kingpin of crime. Okay, so now diving in / breaking down episode 3. Well, one of the first things to mention / talk about, starting with Wilson Fick and his wife Vanessa, because they try to put away their, criminal stuff and such, and on account that he's mayor now, and, 2 leaders of these New York gangs, these 2 guys being named Victor, played by Gino Anthony Pezzi, if I'm saying that right, and Luca, played by Patrick Murney. Well, they're fighting each other, and Wilson believes that if they fight each other, that will bring peace and such and all that, if they kill one another. And this frustrates his wife, Vanessa, and with this undoing her job and all that, her job being undone, and she would send Wilson's right-hand man, Buck Cashman, for, Luca to pay Victor $1.8 million restitution, all that. Yeah. It's gonna be very interesting, because, with what has so far happened with Wilson and Vanessa by this point, and now that they're doing couples therapy and such, but of course, we're going to find out. I'm going to find out what else happens next on account of their complicated relationship and all that, Okay, and now coming back to where we last left off, what had been going on in the last episode, the whole situation with Hector, and for Matt and the others to prove that Hector is innocent and all that. Well, like what happened at the very end of episode 2. Nikki is brought in safe and sound thanks to Cherry, but the NYPD officers, especially Powell, they will stop at nothing to take down Nikki and to make sure that Hector is, proven not guilty on account of the jury and such. And because, with where Cherry is keeping Nikki safe and sound, eventually they would be discovered, and supposedly Cherry, he had placed Nikki in the back of a van, and an NYPD officer would chase down Cherry in the van, and, I think it was obvious, what's gonna happen? But nope, he was not in the back of that van, because somehow, thanks to someone else that is working alongside with Matt and the others, managed to get Nikki at the court safe and sound. Yeah, Forrest Tam, that's whom it is, being played by Johnny M. Woo. He helps out, and by getting Nikki in a taxi cab and safe and sound to the court. And because Nikki is supposed to be brought in, and questioned about, when Hector saved his life and all that. Also, not to mention that Hector's wife and his family members are there, and the look on each of their faces and how his wife is feeling about this, yeah, you can tell. But when Nikki is there and is questioned about what happened in the subway that evening, well, he's intimidated by the police. They're looking at him and just like, oh man, because what's he gonna do? Like, he's not used to being in this situation, and he flat out chickens out. He says that he was back at home, nothing happened in the subway, nothing, and yeah, the chance of them proving that Hector was not guilty, and if Nikki would be any help, no, Nikki blew it, and like, so much for that. What now? Well, to speed things up still, because with what's just happened, they didn't get any help from Nikki. With limitless options and all that, Matt, he would take quite the risk. He would reveal to everyone in court that Hector is, not Hunter, Hector, I gotta slow down also, Hector is the White Tiger, and it just gets out of hand in the courtroom. People shouting and such, and of course Judge Cooper just like, order my court and such. And he sets Matt straight on what the heck he pulled and such. Yeah, Judge Cooper. Sorry. I gotta slow down. Judge Cooper would set Matt straight on what he pulled, and yeah, it just gets out of hand. However, as the court continues, and sure enough, there would be other people that would step in, and they would talk about when they were saved by the vigilante hero, White Tiger, all the good things he did, and when Hector would be questioned again, he would be back up at the microphone. Matt would ask him why he did this, why he did that, and each of the people describing the situations they were in, and when White Tiger stepped in to save them. Yeah, and all that Hector can say is, it was the right thing to do. That's all he can say, because it's a pure fact. That's his job as a vigilante hero. And yeah, what would happen next? And even after, golly, because D.A. Hogberg, he would make this long, impeccable speech about, a negative speech about Hector, just golly, and with the mentioning of the NYPD officers, the situation in the subway, like, yeah. After that long speech that Hochberg gave, in the end, the jury comes to the decision that the 3 cases that Hector was charged for, and you know how that works, all not guilty. In the end, Hector is proven not guilty. Good. That's good to hear. And, well, yeah, because now the news breaks that Hector was not found guilty. Obviously, Wilson, he finds out about this, and he would have another interview/meeting with journalist B.B. Orick. And basically, Wilson, he says during the interview, it's being recorded on an iPhone, he denounces the trial's results and vows to uphold the anti-vigilante stance, etc. At least for now, because with whatever Wilson's going to do next, later on in the first season, you never know. But yeah. And also, it was mentioned to Hector by Matt that he should just, by now, quit his days as the White Tiger. Now that he's known and all that, like, he shouldn't go back as the White Tiger and all that. But, well, Hector made it very clear. And of course, that would go for any superhero, even like in the case of Matt Murdock, being Daredevil, and for now, stepping away from his alter ego, that vigilante hero in the streets of New York. It wasn't by, he made, it's not, he just became that way. He chose that and such. Like, it wasn't anything by force or anything like that. That's what he did. And, the details that Hector says, which is pure facts. And the same goes for Matt. Even though, again, for now, he stepped away from his alter ego, yeah. And right before the episode ends off, well, there was one moment where we would see Hector. Even after everything went so great, proven not guilty, everything was back to normal for him, and even on account of his family. Even like the emotional reactions on his face, his wife's face, and so on. Well, he would step back into his alter ego, his vigilante hero, White Tiger, and go out in the streets to listen and hear if there's any trouble, which there is. A woman screams, and when he's making his way to where it's coming from, someone shoots him in the head. Well, so much for White Tiger, I tell you. And turns out whom shot White Tiger, well, could it be? And can't forget to mention this, because in the first 2 episodes and up to this one, we had been seeing at times a couple of characters, especially some of the NYPD officers, having the symbol of a skull. And the look and drawing of that skull, that symbol of a skull, being the same one that comes straight from Frank Castle himself, a.k.a. the Punisher. Could that have been the Punisher that shot White Tiger in the head? Well, it's obvious, and yeah, by the next episode, we'll find out we are to get Frank Castle. Yeah, but man, what a heck of a way for that episode to end off. Just when everything looked good for Hector, and when it was a bad idea, Hector, he took quite the risk. He wasn't going to stop what he was going to do. Being the White Tiger, he ends up still being killed. You can only imagine, how his family would react to that, especially in the case of Matt Murdock and the others. Not long after he was proven not guilty, everything went back to normal for him. God. But yeah, of course, we're going to find out what happens next in the 4th episode. But yeah, also want to mention this too, that the way after that happens, during the end credits, all we hear is just the sounds of waves and birds, and on account of what Hector was talking about to Matt earlier, Ugh, very fitting and sad at the same time, right? Ugh. But yeah, episode 3, The Hollow of His Hand. It was another pretty good episode, and for it being the 3rd episode of Daredevil Born Again, yeah, everything that episode 3 had to offer did not disappoint, of course. How far we had gotten to where Hector was, hopefully going to be proven not guilty and such, when it was looking very bad, Nikki chickened out, Matt took the risk revealing to everyone that he's the White Tiger, and, with what was going on with a little bit with Wilson Fix, etc. But even in the end, in the case of Hector, he proved not to be guilty. Everybody spoke for him, how so much, good things he did as White Tiger, saving those in the streets of New York as a vigilante hero, and yeah, just in the end, he proved not to be guilty, but yet, when he stepped back in as White Tiger, his life would be taken from him, he would be shot in the head, and just, yeah. Just everything that goes on in episode 3. It was amazing, it's fantastic. Again, for it being the 3rd episode of the 1st season of Daredevil Born Again. Just the first 3 episodes of season 1 of Daredevil Born Again. They were fantastic. So far, a great way to start off Daredevil, and as you would expect from Daredevil sometimes, dark moments and all that, and with what's happened, oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's just, again, the first 3 episodes, they were fantastic. And what about you guys? What did you think of the first 3 episodes of Daredevil Born Again Season 1? Which of these 3 episodes, the first 3 episodes of Daredevil Born Again, were your favorites? I mean, I'm sure you all enjoyed the first 3, and favorite moments to come from these first 3 episodes? You just couldn't believe what you were seeing. You were getting into this, and you were shocked and just emotional with what had happened throughout each of these 3 episodes, and with what happened in the first episode, and from there on up to episode 3, and also there were a few funny moments here and there. I got a few chuckles, and I'm sure you did too. Yeah, because despite with all the heavy drama and such that we get in Daredevil, it wouldn't hurt sometimes to have a few funny, chuckling moments, right? Yeah, especially coming straight from the MCU. But yeah, again, overall, what did you think of the first 3 episodes with what has so far happened, with some returning characters, new faces, and so on, with what all I've had to say, my Part 1 review, and yeah, what did you think of my Part 1 review of Daredevil Born Again, the first 3 episodes of Season 1? Leave comments, and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review, my Part 1 review, I should say, of Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again. Episodes 1, 2, and 3, Heaven's Half Hour, Optics, and the Hollow of His Hand. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward. And I will see you guys in the next video / review. Take care, and until my Part 2 review of Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, Episodes 4, 5, and 6, peace out, and Avengers, assemble.